Hi everybody, my name is Carrie Mubarak at wooingnature.life, and we are right there in the midst of the full moon. It is a full moon today. You might have been feeling that energy a little bit yesterday, maybe the day before. You might be feeling it for a couple of days after. We got a strong full moon going on right now. So strong that she is holding three other planets in the balance with her. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and what that means and what that's going to look like for you over the next few days, as you are doing your full moon rituals or your full moon ceremonies, or just as you're taking this time out for yourself to kind of look at where you are, assess your progress to date, from the last full moon to this one, or from the new moon to this one. It's just a time for assessment, a time to put the light of the moon, or to shed the light of the moon on your situation. So I'm going to talk to you about the energy of the full moon, and then I'm also going to talk to you about how she's balancing these other planets, because she's definitely holding her own. Literally, we have an opposition between the moon, which is in Aquarius, and on the other side of the spectrum, there are three planets: the sun, Venus, and Mars, that are being held in the balance. That's kind of like how I like to think of oppositions. It's almost like, how do we balance these things? How do we bring these oppositions to some level of balance? And so I'll talk about that in just a second. For those of you who are not accustomed to getting into the moon tides, the full moon is a time for you to kind of look and get a perspective on life. It's also a time of assessment. It's a time to look at where you've been, so that you can fully see where you're going. If you think about the night sky and you think about the moon or the full moon illuminates the dark. And so, especially if it's a one of those moons that's really, really bright, when you go outside at night, it almost seems like it's daytime. And so, from a symbolic standpoint, we are talking about illuminating the dark, the things that have been hidden, the things that we may not have been paying attention to, or the things that have been kind of in the background of our minds. Those things are coming to light. And then this is also a time when we can just use the light to give us perspective on ourselves, and on our dark sides, or on the things that are held in the shadows that may be preventing progress toward goals that we've been setting for ourselves, or that we wanted to set for ourselves. So it's just a good time for assessment in general. A lot of times people will do their affirmations, or they may get together with their friends and do vision boards, or all kinds of things on full moon, around the full moon. We associate the full moon with all kinds of weird, strange, crazy activity. That's just because it kind of ramps up our intuitive side, and also ramps up our animal nature. So on that note, I am going to get right to the moon, which is dealing with our animal nature. It is an Aquarius, 22nd degree of Aquarius. And it talks about putting your animal nature in check, okay, especially when you're in social settings. So Aquarius rules the 11th house. The 11th house is all about our interactions with other people, usually not necessarily our family or close friend. Well, it could be close friends, but not real close, because those kind of settle in the third house around Gemini and Mercury. But we're talking about just general social gatherings. It could be a work gathering, it could be friends getting together on the weekend, whatever it is. But for whatever reasons, these things will kind of wake up, or these situations will wake up your animal nature. But it says for you to kind of put that in check. The animal nature, your own um, untamed side, and you all know what your untamed side is. Untamed can be untamed. There's a spectrum of untamedness, okay? And you know where you are on that spectrum, okay? So it's about being tamed by your higher self, and recognizing the higher self as the source of that power. So it's not just like, like squelching it down. It's like understanding the animal nature, but then using that information that you gain from that to see it as a source of true power. But you can't use it as a source of true power unless you get it under control, because it's just wild and crazy and out there without any kind of restraint. Then it's going to cause problems, and it could cause problems in your social situations, and you definitely don't want this to be happening if it's a work social situation, because then everybody going to be looking at you with the side eye. Okay. This is also a time where the moon is asking you to deal with some of your imbalances. So if you have those behaviors that were inherited or those that were learned, we talk about nature versus nurture and why we are the way that we are. Okay, you want to put those in check too. So wherever there are some imbalances, maybe from your upbringing or behaviors that you learned from your parents or behaviors that you learned in traumatic situations, or when you were coping with something, your coping mechanisms, all of that kind of stuff, you want to deal with that too, because we're trying to raise things to a higher vibration, especially when it comes to your relationships, your communication, and in how you're presenting in the world. And I'll get to that in a minute with the other planets. So like this, you don't want to take this whole thing too seriously. Like, you do want to deal with these issues, but you don't want it to be like, I mean, don't bog yourself down with it. Like, don't go down and oh my God, I really need to deal with this issue. You want to try to keep it at the play level if you can. It's about testing out things. Like, it's taking what you know about yourself and trying some things out, taking some risk with yourself. Say, okay, I'm not going to do it this way that I normally do it. I'm going to try a different approach. And by trying a different approach, you may, of course, see that it has a different effect. Okay. And then that's a part of that refinement. So we're really refining who we are. We're not getting rid of the animal nature. We're just bringing it into perspective where that can be useful. And you will find that those aspects of yourself can be endearing, like those things that people like. How you have a situation where people, like, they either love you or hate you? Like, that's kind of the feeling that I get around this. It's like, there's this aspect of yourself that in some circles people are like, and then you go in another circle and it's like, oh, people really like that about you. Well, that can tell you where some of that may be tamed. You may have to tame some of that down in one circle, whereas in another circle, people are all for it or whatever. So you just got to learn the difference between the two. This moon also talks about spiritual principles having to have a practical outlet. Okay, so when we're talking about raising the vibration and taming your animal nature, again, what I'm saying is we're not getting rid of it. You're just bringing it to balance, because the spirit, there's spirit in that. Okay, there's your spirit lives in that. This is also a good time, since we're talking about animal nature, to talk about animal spirits, talk about totems. Sorry about that phone ringing. It'll stop in just a minute. Dealing with your animal nature is also a good time to get in touch with with your with your spiritual totem animal. So if you don't know about your totem animals, pay attention to the animals that keep showing up for you. And then your totem animals can take on different forms. Some of them are very permanent and they stay with you for your whole life. Others are just there for a period of time because you may be going through something and you need a special message from their spirit to kind of teach you about that. So I would say during this full moon to pay attention to what animals come towards you or what you see a lot of, because that may give you insight on how to deal with that. Okay, so that's just the moon. I haven't gotten to the other side of the balance that we're talking about. So there's an opposition between the moon and three other planets that I told you before. One is the sun, one is Mars, and the other one is Venus. So literally, if you can imagine the moon being on one side, so all that stuff that I just told you about connecting with knowing your animal nature and taming your animal nature and bringing that to balance and dealing with your past psychological issues, things that you learn, behaviors that you learn, and that kind of thing, and connecting to that and being able to still that is all hanging in the balance on all this other stuff that I'm getting ready to tell you right now. Okay, she's carrying a lot. The moon is carrying a lot right now. She's carrying a lot, and she's carrying a lot of weight. Okay, so juxtaposition with all of that is Mars energy. Mars energy. Mars is in Leo. We have a lot of planets in Leo. And three that I just mentioned are three of them, and then Mercury is the other one. So lots of Leo energy. You know how Leo energy is. It's very powerful. It accepts leadership. It wants to be out there. It wants to be front and center. It wants to be always present. This is where we show our fire. This is where we show what we're working with, and that kind of thing. Now you can start to see where this balancing of the animal nature comes in, because sometimes we can go and put ourselves out there and be super boastful and all of that kind of stuff, but then you ain't really ready. Okay, make sure you check yourself before you go and put those things out there. Okay, so Mars energy, 28 degrees of Leo. There is the desire or the push or the drive for manifestation. So you want things to happen and you want them to happen now. Mars energy is very forceful. Mars energy is very powerful, and Mars energy is very aggressive. So what we want, and we want right now. That's that flavor. Okay, but as you can see, if you look at that with the moon energy, if you're off, or if it's just about some kind of just like I want what I want, what I wanted, it's going to be out of balance. You got to bring all of that back to balance. So you're going to see what motivates you during this time. You're going to utilize that energy. Here's the positive: utilizing that energy to get past the fakery. Anything that doesn't seem authentic to yourself, anything that doesn't feel like it really truly represents you, there's a rejection of that from this Mars energy. So the desire for manifestation and the desire to manifest things in your life, and the things that are motivating you are pushing you towards your authentic self, and it's also pushing you toward getting rid of the things in your life that are straying you from your own sense of integrity. Okay, your own sense of integrity becomes very important. Okay, self-fulfillment, Mars self-fulfillment and fulfillment of the things that you want is very prominent. Again, we're talking about desire, one's own desires for manifestation. And that being able to manifest requires full attention and full participation. Okay, you can't manifest things if you're doubting. You can't manifest things if you're not really sure of yourself. It's all or nothing kind of is what I'm feeling there. So new experiences, taking chances, doing things that you don't normally do, following your instincts and seeing where that leads. That's all Mars energy right now. That's all Mars's energy now. The Sun and Venus are both in the 22nd degree of Leo, so both of them kind of have the same flavor. The Sun is how we express ourselves. It's about us expressing ourselves out in the world and how we feel about expressing ourselves in the world. Of course, Venus is about how we love, how we feel loved, and what we want to get from the love experiences that we have, our relationships, how we're giving and receiving love, in other words. So both of them being in the 22nd degree of Leo is about balancing what you're working with, like your skill and your abilities, what it is that you have within you, and you want to utilize that to again vibrate at a higher level. So it's not about just showing off. It's really about your own survival, or the survival of your own spirit. So your ability to be able to manage in these social situations that I talked about with the moon, being able to parlay with people, being able to matriculate and maneuver in a social environment, comes from the experiences that you have had and the training that you've had in those areas. Okay, so wherever it is, whether it's a love situation or whether it's a work situation, but anywhere where you have to assert yourself in the situation, okay, is where this balance of what comes into play with how you're dealing with everybody else. So sometimes in this situation, particularly because we're talking about social situations, people can see that as like you're being arrogant, or you're being boastful, or you're overly confident, but really it's just what you've learned and how you've had to manage, and then the skill and ability that you're operating with now. So it's really about confidence and self-confidence. It's not about what other people are thinking right now. It's really more or less about what you know that you have, and then using it in a balanced way. And again, we're talking about, it's a social time. The moon is it's a social time. So you got to really pay attention to how you're dealing with people. And you also got to be confident in yourself. So part of this is like mastering the art of being your full self, owning your full self, owning the experiences that you've had, and not straying away from that, and not shunning that, or not like downplaying that. That's not the idea, but it's like knowing that that's what you're walking with, and knowing that that's good with you. And then whatever other people may think on the outside, you win some, you lose some. That's the way I think about that one. So approach this with a carefree attitude. You have the capacity to handle whatever's coming your way. Now, I know with Venus there, we're talking about relationships, love relationships, whatever is thrown at you. If somebody's coming at you with some jealous energy, or if they think you're being a little bit too out there, if you're showing too much of your stuff, you will know how to communicate that with them. You will know how to communicate what's going on inside of you with the people outside of you, because you have had this experience before, and because you will be drawing from those experiences. So don't be afraid to be bold, but at the same time, again, what I talked about with the moon energy, make sure that you have that side of yourself, that kind of raw, abandoned side of yourself, that you have balanced that out first, because it can come off-putting. You can be off-putting. We're just out of a Mercury retrograde period. You don't want to create the Mercury retrograde period with your mouth, or with not being able to show some sense of self-restraint, or without being able to show your refinement. Because I think that this is really, excuse me, I've got a message coming up. This is really what it's all about, is it's about refining yourself socially. Ultimately, that's what it is. And it's about knowing yourself, knowing both sides of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, knowing the animal side of yourself, that raw self that will snap and pop in a minute and break it and be done. Light a fire, set a torch, burn a bridge. You know what I'm saying? That side of yourself balanced um, with how you're going to matriculate with people moving forward. Because it's not just about you know, it's not just about reckless abandon. That part of yourself, though, has to be honored. So that's a part of the whole picture there, and that's a little deeper. If you need to get a little deeper, we can get a little deeper in a personal reading. But yeah, that it's a balance. It's definitely a balance there. All right, so I did say I wanted to talk a little bit about Mercury. Even though the moon is not in opposition to Mercury, the moon is in opposition to the other three planets that we just talked about. But Mercury is also in Leo in the 4th degree, and I think it goes without saying, because we're talking about social life. We're talking about um, um, you know, people being able to matriculate with each other and understanding yourself in context with other people. You cannot even have that conversation without talking about Mercury, which is about communication and conversation. Um, and what the 4th degree of Leo is really the pullback from all of this, because there's a lot of very powerful energy going here, including the moon's energy in Aquarius. Very powerful. It's an assertive energy going on. But Mercury in Leo, and the 4th degree of Leo is the pullback of all of it. And it's like, reconsider your importance in the grand scheme of things. Reconsider your opinion, whether it's that important right now. Reconsider whether your opinion is right. Okay? Look at yourself not from the standpoint of the self, but look at the whole thing. Like, in the grand scheme of time, we are a jot and a tittle. We are small. We are tiny. We are grains of sand in the grand scheme of time in and of itself. And so when you put your personal, what you want and how you want it and when you want it, in the perspective of that, then you can kind of see, well, you know what? Maybe I can pull back there. Maybe I can restrain myself there. Maybe I don't have to have the shoes, the boots, my nails and my toes done because, my boots are covering my toes anyway. So I can pull back some of what I want. It's not that big of a deal. So try to see the bigger picture when you are communicating with people. Um, think of your whatever it is that you're asserting or whatever it is you feel like you must assert. Ask yourself the question, in the grand scheme of things over time, 10 years from now, is this really going to be all that important? Because if it's not holding up in that on that level, then it's probably something you can wait on. Okay, I'm not going to say stifle yourself, and I'm not going to say restrain yourself or, shove things down and not express yourself. But I'm saying it could wait. Okay, so there is something to be said about taking risk in your communication, though. Like, I don't want you to say the wrong thing, or I don't want you to push any buttons or anything like that. But I'm going to say the risk taking in communication is really about opening up yourself. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes the risk taking is not you're taking a risk by not saying anything because, like, you're so used to saying something. And it's like, oh, I really feel like I got to say this. And it's like, take a risk in not saying something and see how that works for you, if that's your paradigm. Now, if you're a person who doesn't communicate with people and you usually keep things to yourself, then take the risk of saying something then. So whatever feels like a risk in communication, try that. If you feel a little bit nervous about it, then do it anyway, because that's what's going to open you up. That's what's going to give you a new perspective. And it gives other people a chance to know what's going on in your head. And it also gives you a chance to see, what's going on in your head and see that with other people's opinions too. So it changes your perspective and it gives you a new experience, and then it gives you some more material to get to add to your abilities, which you already have that anyway, because you've had experience. So just adds to the experience. Whatever is happening, try to act in the immediate. Like, don't do a lot of thinking, but try to act more from your gut, or from your intuition, or from what you're feeling. All right. Don't put too many thoughts around it, because you're gonna, discombobulate the situation. You don't want to do that. And be ready. Be ready for whatever comes afterwards. You may say something and a person may feel defensive. You may say something and people, might be on the attack. But I'm going to say, don't you be on the defensive and don't you be on the attack. Just kind of be yourself. And treat this whole period as an experiment. Nobody's perfect, and you're not going to get everything just right. Not in your communication, maybe not even in practice. But just try to, I don't know, just try to see the whole thing as, I'm experimenting with myself right now. And these experiments with self, me looking at, what it is that I need to balance out, me taming my animal nature, me taking some risk in conversation, me being a little bolder in my approach, me being in touch with what it is that's motivating me or what my desires are. It's all in the big pot of you being or operating within a higher self with more integrity, more authenticity, and being able to move forward with what you have. You are going to make mistakes during this period, but those mistakes are going into the knowledge bank, and that ultimately is going to be good for you. Okay, so just take all of this stuff in consideration as you're doing your affirmations, as you're connecting with people around you. Some of you guys, because it's the full moon, you're definitely going to be gathering, getting together, going to parties, connecting with your friends, having sister circles, all of that kind of stuff. Just kind of take all of this material with you, and then take it with you over the next couple of days as you are putting together your goals and taking a look at what you've already completed and see how that all fits into it, and then move forward with that. So until the next big moon phase, which will be the new moon, or until the next full moon, just kind of walk with that energy and see where it takes you, see where it leads you, and we'll see what's what. If you want to get a full moon reading, I do that. I also do new moon readings. You can check in with me at Kerri, Kerri, at wooingnature.life. As always, you know the deal. Have a great day, and I hope you have a wonderful life.